Okay, so I just uploaded all the packages that I've been able to compile with the exception of 3. They're large, so I don't know what's going on with those. It's CMake, Kamocha, and Flight Gear data, which is game data, but I don't even have Flight Gear compiled, so it doesn't really matter all that much. Cling, yeah, I wish I can get that up there. It's 125 megabytes, and I'm not sure if there's some kind of limit. I brought all my patches up, and what I hope to do now is just explain how the packages can be used, how they can be changed, and what the purpose of the whole thing is. So what I've been trying to do is two things: is to find out how far things can go, and in addition to that, try to figure out, just get some more answers, or get things started, or get the ball rolling. So in general, even though I have builds of Library X11, Pango, Cairo, Mesa, Glue, and Glut, I don't have a build of Pango, but the rest of them I do. They're not working perfectly yet. So the idea behind what I've done here is to allow pretty much anyone who has Git to download the packages and download all the patches that I have and put them in place and install the packages as necessary and get a quick start on working on the packages they're interested in working on, and being able to see what changes I've made from the patches and then change them to get them working better. The big issue is shared memory. I'm still going to be working this. Another issue is not having write access to the temp directory, but I know that shouldn't be a reason why anything stops. And I have to look. There's one other thing I'm going to try with Library X11. I may have actually forgotten to add Library Network, which may be the reason why it's not starting. So I might even have that setting in my latest upload. I have probably a lot more of packages that I'm going to have to do pretty much one at a time. In the multimedia, the networking, and the sysutils section at least. Probably audio. There's a bunch of categories that I just haven't had the time to look over all the various things. But the idea is to be able to get anyone started. Now, if you just want to use the packages, the deal is when they're built in package source, they're actually the binary files have the library file location embedded in them, and they're relative to each other. So if you want to run, so when you look at if you do a readelf on one of the executable files, you'll see that it has a path to a library that's relative to it. So it's looking for a library in a directory called lib in the same root directory that package is in. If it doesn't find it there, it won't run. It runs fine. It doesn't have to be a non-packaged. That's the way I found things to be. When I put it non-packaged, it doesn't necessarily work. There's a conflict between the system trying to direct. It's not too clear. I'm just going to leave things for myself the way I have it. I'm probably going to end up maybe making a symbolic link or something to my package source. No, that's what I did last time. I got to figure out what I'm going to do to get these things pathed, because right now I don't have anything pathed. And nothing really does path. But they do run. Basically, they were built in boot home package blah bin library share doc whatever. I haven't done a patch count, but there's a lot of them. And a lot of them are very, very small. That is to say, all I've really done is added a header here and there. A lot of the time. Other common changes I've made is FD bits to bits, or SIGIO to SIGIL, or they're all pretty much the same. And a lot of them probably could have been completely avoided if we're able to make changes to our headers. In some cases, I've had to bring down headers, and I think there's something going on with the netdp.h header. Now, between July and October, one feature that was added to Haiku is I'm no longer getting packages that won't build because of missing VA list things. So that's good. So in general, they're there. Most of the patches are pretty generic, but there are times when I had to do things that were just only going to work in patch source, but it's a rare occasion. You could probably grep the whole tree for boot home package, and you'll find what you're looking for, or the ones that need to change. Shouldn't be that much relative to the total amount that I've loaded up there, but there's well over 1,000 patches. And what's so sad about it is that on a lot of these builds where they would have just built if we had redirects in our headers, it doesn't. In just very few cases, Sunlin, SIGIO, and a few things that are at least were commonly used at one time. Yeah, I'm not taking the ages down of each one of these. These builds, there's a lot. But at the end of the day, it makes it a very, very large task. And now, one thing you should know about my patches that I've done nothing about Math Library, and I've taken care of not all of them, but a lot of the library linkages in what I've called my settings. So these are basically, I have a gigantic, in package source terminology, a gigantic mk.conf file, and in that mk.conf file, I'm extensively, very, very extensively using the features that are provided by package source that allow for an on-the-fly, patchless removal of Math Library or substitution of LSocket with LNetwork. But it doesn't always work, and it really depends on what kind of compile methodology is being used. And I still have some, obviously, some unsolved mysteries, like Ruby. I haven't been able to link, but I have been able to actually solve Flex, and I probably should talk about that. And this was one of the strangest things, and I probably should just do a dry run to get some parameters here, because right now I'm not. I know I have the answer in here. I'm just not completely sure as to why the answer that I'm using actually worked. So go into my settings here. So what I've done, what would happen with a package called FFTW in the math category was that it would get all the way to the end of the build, and then it would just die. And I'd look in a directory that had .lax files, and there'd be some broken links. And at one point, I decided to see, well, let's see if this thing builds in Haiku Porter. It did, and during the build process, there was a .a file that was made, and I just checked that into the directory that had the broken links, and then it built. That really didn't give me the answer. I didn't know why that worked. Couldn't really tell. Then I was going to do, trying to grab some builds as they went along as I was going through the develop category, which is huge, and sometimes an error will scroll by the screen, and I'll go, I can take care of that. So I'll just go in and try to, deal with it. And I was using I was trying to build GNOME desktop utils, and I had solved whatever error had come up, and it was getting ready to get to the link area, and I noticed that it said operation not supported. Whenever it says operation not supported, something's trying to hard link. And I thought, okay, well, I gotta go into my settings and see if the hard links are being provided by package source or by the compiler, and try to deal with it. The first thing I try to do is turn it off the hard linking capabilities that are incorporated in package source. When that happens and there's a failure. Meanwhile, I looked and it said the build succeeded. I thought, well, this is a false positive. You know, I gotta let's just turn the hard links off and build this thing again. And then I tried to build it again with the hard links off. It failed. I look, I thought a lot like Math FFTW's failure. So what I did is I went into the into my settings, and I actually forced Math FFTW to use hard links, which is just the weirdest thing I've ever done. It's the only time I've ever seen failure equals success. But so I'm gonna actually grep for actually I don't need to grep for it. It's just over here. It's in math. No, it's under my solutions, isn't it? My settings. So much. Because I have so many settings, I'm going to grep for it. So I got it in. These are the I have a live tool share, hard links, configure arguments, and C flags. So what am I doing here? C flags. Sometimes it takes a whole bunch of different things to get these things to build. What am I doing with FFTW? Okay, that's turned off. So that has nothing to do with the solution that I have. I might as well just get rid of that. All right. Configure arguments. Or env settings. Where's FFTW? That probably isn't really necessary. Okay, then the hard links, this I know is. Right here I said tools platform, make sure you use LN. And the last one is live tools shared, and this might be part of the actual solution, and this may be the actual solution. So FFTW, what's going on here? Okay, I'm going to actually going to put this down here at the bottom. I'll comment it out. Let's see what happens when I try to build it. Just want to make sure that I don't have any. Okay, it's not there. So what I'm trying to sort out is, what is it? The combination of these two things that gave me success? Was it? Do I have positive with one of these? What's going on? So FFTW takes a long time to build, which is part of the problem. Alright, so just going over some of my settings here. The settings, if you use my patches, you have to use my settings because they go together. If you don't, a lot of things that would succeed will fail. So, I have a very large daisy chain. These are all the different settings files that I'm using, and maybe down to 16 there. Most of the actual, I've moved my settings down into not the global settings, except for these very common substitutions. I've tried to bring everything down here to the package area. And this is from a couple days ago, actually. So if I need to pass CPP flags, this one actually doesn't even belong here, but I just go so fast. I'll have scribblings all over all this stuff, so just forget it. Sometimes I try things. Sometimes I'll try it. The package doesn't work and I move on and I forget to remove the fact that I tried it. Such as FTW. I just removed. I really have yet to figure out 100% when or how passing the variable on for, say, library network to a build is going to work out. Sometimes it's C flags, sometimes it's CPP flags, sometimes it's LD flags, sometimes it's just .lib, sometimes you have to actually edit the make file with substitute classes. A lot of different stuff going on here. Now for a while, the reason, let's go back to FFTW. One of the reasons why I'm doing this is because the first thing I thought is, well, I got broken links, it must be hard links, let's put it in. So I had FFTW under use soft links setting, you know. It doesn't affect everything. Package sources, tool set for hard links doesn't work to unzip tar files that have hard links embedded in them. It won't work. You actually have to go outside the system and unzip it somewhere else because the hard link is in the tar file. You can't do anything about it, as far as I know. It doesn't seem like that should be true. I'm going to look into it further. Another common missing library is not just LNetwork is library BSD. Sometimes even library root. Even though it wants to inherently link, there are very few instances where I've actually had to get the compiler to use library root. At least I've been led to that conclusion. Could have been false positive. I mean, but I doubt it. On those rare cases. Very, very rare. Now, the way I have this set up is you're going to be able to look. If you're going to say, well, okay, well, maybe this guy's worked on it. Then you want to find out about PRNGD or whatever. You know, basically, somewhere in there, the make file is missing in library network. But you'd have to use grep -r on the package repository to actually use it. I also have my settings in my patches repository and a few changes, and I have the Samba smb.conf file also in my patches. I should probably move that. Some of these settings came from Diger. I've kept them and I've used them until I've got to the point where I thought this just isn't going to work. And then I've turned them off only those instances, or if you know it relies on the assumption that I'm going to be able to build GCC, and I haven't been able to do that. I haven't been able to build Qt4 yet, but I'm working on that. I think I might know what the answer was, actually. Of course, I've been thinking that for an awful long time here. Now, this configure args is huge. A lot of the time, If you disable something, you don't have to patch. You just disable a certain feature that you know is not going to work inside the environment that you're in, and then you go with it from there. One very good example of that is actually shared memory. And so I don't think this has ever really been very clearly spelled out, and I have to speculate. It's not really. Basically, I could clearly articulate what the question is. The question is, does our, and I don't know, does our kernel support shared memory? Right? Because if it doesn't support shared memory, it doesn't matter if we make a shared memory header. It's just not going to work even if you have the shared memory header. I'm almost come to that conclusion that our kernel doesn't support shared memory, but who am I to say? I've been able to use a shared memory header, and I've been able to build Cairo with the shared memory header that I've used from the Haiku, webpage, and brought it down, and I've locally brought it in and put quotes around the include statement for that. Towards the end and the more recent stuff, I just get rid of the shared memory stuff, because the end result for me was yes, I had a build of Mesa, and yes, or whatever Mesa requires shared memory or asks for it. Yes, I was able to get that to build. Yes, I was able to get Cairo to build. But when Pango tries to link against it, it says undefined reference to shared memory. SHM get SHM. Two of the variables that are in the shared memory header that is under development right now. Wow. Wow. Okay, so let's go back to this. Oh yeah, so two of the variables are actually in the MMAP variable. But getting back to this, here's FFTW, and I'll get to this sh live tool override and this minus rpath minus WL LD flag in a little bit. I'm still not sure exactly what it means, but I know it's been very good for me. But FFTW doesn't actually require that. What FFTW requires is the compiler to attempt to make hard links even though the file system doesn't support it. So now I know that for sure, because the only thing that I have going for this build is the fact that I've overridden and I've made sure that even if the system calls for ln-s, that it will call for a hard link. And that is the strangest thing I've ever seen. But what I think happens is whatever is broken about the library tool, that I don't even know which library tool I'm using, it breaks things when it tries to make soft links, but when it tries to make hard links, it succeeds in only some cases. And so FFTW is going to be one of the ones that I do this for. Now I'll get back to the share library tool override, and then I'll get more. This was one of the strangest things. So somewhere in here I was trying to build a PHP package. And I'll talk more about PHP and Apache in a little bit. But let's get to this. And I suspect that it's not just PHP, but if I know that the package has PHP, I'm putting it in this setting. So there was a guy that was trying to build something on AIX, and he was, at the end, it might have been PHP, I don't remember. I just read the email message, and I just tried the solution that was proposed that worked for him, and it happened to work for me. So, and it's kind of hard to sort out what ImageMagick needs this. So basically, I'm passing on an LD flag option to Haiku to say use rpath minus WL. I tried it, and the damn thing built, and so I just went with it. So this is probably the one category I've used the most. Each line has two things on it, with the exception of the one that was FFTW. That's line 58. 56 times 2, that's 101 packages that need this setting. Some of them may not have. I've just actually put in. So I don't know if I can make that claim, but a good portion of these do need, like FLTK13 for whatever reason needed this setting. So I used it. How did I know? It gets, after a while, it gets to the point where you look and you see an error, and you kind of recognize, well, that error looks kind of like the error that happened with this other thing. And then you just try it. And then once you've identified and it works, and there are other packages that kind of look like the other package, or pretty much or closely related to the other package, you just go ahead and try it with that too, and it'll probably work. Pretty much. Now, getting back to the shared memory and Cairo. So at the end of the day, when Cairo and when I'm trying to build, Pango tries to link with Cairo, and it can't find shared memory. What's so really strange about all this, at least to me, this is all like voodoo magic to me, really, is that, I'm gonna move this thing up. Is that Pango didn't ever ask me, because what happens is during the build, it'll look for the shared memory header in Haiku's headers. Of course, I don't have write access to it, so it'll say, I can't find it, and then I'll locally include it, and I'll put quotes around shm.h, and I'll put the file in the same directory so it gets part of the build. Pango never asked me for shared memory. So I'm just wondering, if it builds, never asking for shared memory in the first place, and then how does it work with, if in an environment that has shared memory, if it doesn't pull in the shared, so I got to look at the code a little bit more. It probably does have a way to pull shared memory in it. It's just, in this case, for the case with Pango, it's actually properly detecting the fact that the system doesn't have shared memory. What I'm going to do is, the first question I have is, if all the headers are in place, is the shared memory going to work? Don't know. Don't know how much kernel work has been done. Don't know how much would or could happen at Haiku. I don't know how much would happen over at the new OS site, but there hasn't been a lot of activity for a while. Let's just say 4 years, just to be generous, at the new OS site. That doesn't mean kernel work hasn't been happening in Haiku. So I don't know. But that's the really that's the thing. You don't really know. Now there was a conversation about shared memory, and someone asked, when I try to link this, it says undefined reference to shared memory. Why is that? And the answer was because it hasn't been implemented yet. The problem is I don't know what that exactly means. Does it mean not implemented in the kernel? Does it mean not implemented by means of a header, but the capability exists in the kernel? Don't know. But if the capability doesn't exist in the kernel, and actually I really don't think it does, because I'll talk about Apache in a little bit. then there's no, you don't ever want to include shared memory in your builds, and sometimes, if it asks for it, you actually have to pass a compiler option to disable that shared memory function. So you have to open up the the configure file, and they're always huge. You got to go all the way down and you got to find the point where it starts having double dashes with this, with that, disable this, enable this. That's the part that you want, where you can do at the command line configure -- help, look at what comes out and see if you can disable shared memory. I haven't done that yet. I need to do that. And I need to get that in my settings, and I need to rebuild Cairo and Mesa and Glue and Glut and Pango. At least I don't think I have. I think I might have started that process. I might have started that process. I'm not sure, and it's kind of hard to figure out where down the dependency chain the shared memory came in. I don't exactly remember. So I got to look at my patches and see where is it that I forced the shared memory to come in, undo those things, and rebuild my way back up and see if the damn thing links at the end. And I do have a build of LibraryX11, and I started out just not disabling much, and I don't think let's probably under my configure args. So at first I was able to to patch the hell out of it basically, and I think at the end it said undefined reference to shared memory, dude. Alright, well, gotta start over again. So then I disabled, and then it also said undefined references to PCIe, this, right. So I've found that that'll go away if I disable the PCIe access. And these are all options that may or probably are unique to the configure file that is supplied with the modular Xorg server. Okay. MIT shared memory is the verbiage they want to use there instead of SHM and the other packages. I've also disabled these things because I found that when I ran LibraryX11, I'd get an error that the DRI, DRI2, and the GLX libraries couldn't build couldn't load because they couldn't find the symbols. So I've disabled those things. So it'll start to try to run. It'll leave me a message and say, the first time it'll say it can't find. Let's just do it. Why not? Because I don't remember actually. And then I have another executable that I'll run to show that it's not impossible, So this is basically saying that this is very nondescript, but if you okay, so if I look at the log file over here. It's not 1 a.m. yet. Okay. It basically says it can't find any screens. I don't think it's able to load any modules at all that represents a screen. So I got to pretty much figure that out. What's odd about this is the next time I try to run it, it says that, oh, you already have an X server running. So I have to actually reboot to try this again. Not sure what's going on. I don't know where this fragment is sitting. I've looked in the temp file. I don't see anything sitting around but a .x11 folder that doesn't matter whether I delete it or not. I still get this error until I reboot. Now, this could be because I built this thing without including library network. It doesn't complain about it. It doesn't say undefined reference to this or that. But seemingly anything that's going to be communicating over the network is going to need library network, I would think. So I'm going to do another build of this. I actually haven't done a build with that enabled. Getting back to FFTW, what's really interesting about this is that the only reason why this is building is because I'm actually forcing this to use hard links. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen. And I think there are other packages that also need that kind of treatment. I think nickel might be one of them. So maybe I'll just try to build modular XOR server. Make sure that my thing is cleared out, and then I'll call it a night. So basically I'm in a position, if you had my setup, and you knew more about the system, and you were a better coder than I am, and you knew what to do at this stage with whatever's going on here, and I may still end up solving this stuff, I don't know. But the reason why, one of the reasons amongst many that I put my packages up is so that you could put yourself fairly easily in the position that I'm in. Either you can build everything using my patches, or you could just install my packages that lead you up to where you want to be so you can quickly start going. You know, you don't have to make a recipe file, you don't have to do all this technical stuff, you can just get going. Then once you get it solved, then you can go ahead and do all the technical stuff, make the recipe, you know, make all the things that, you know, get things into Haiku Porter. Which it's not until maybe now that I think I might want to start putting things in Haiku Porter. Some of this stuff is experimental. I don't know if I'd want to put experimental things in Haiku Porter. Second of all, I don't know if I'll be able to learn how to use Haiku Porter, and I'd like to. But then again, this has taken so much time, and I have so many more solutions to come up with. I have hundreds of packages to try in multimedia and networking and sysutils, etc., etc. It's probably going to be a while, and I'm this coming around the time the year ends, and maybe a few weeks into January, my majority of my time is not going to be spent doing this. It's going to be doing full-time, you know, tax work. So I'm going to try to do what I can now, but I want to get things out there, and I also want to just be able to provide feedback as the changes are happening over here in the Haiku system. What effect does it have on builds? Because that is important. From what I could see between July and now, the effect on builds has only been positive. But there's still some things that really ought to be done. There is the standard INT header is coming up a lot. Not as much as strings when it was out, but it's not out anymore, so that's pretty much a moot issue, except for the fact that I have released patches to take care of the strings if we ever want to revert back to that circumstance. I have, well, 52% of all the packages have built, okay, and a lot of them are being stopped by Pango or QT4, but there's probably about 200-300 more for me to try that are basically command line Unix type utilities. Alright, let's just get to X11, because now I have the settings in there to actually try to include library network. I don't know if it's really gonna, and what's called modular XOR server. Now while I do that, I'm also gonna attempt to use, and I'm not gonna succeed, I don't think, unless I'm able to figure it out on camera before this XOR server finishes building. There's an older version of X11 server that was built. It's housed at the site Pink Wine Gay. Not sure if I know the guy's name. And it's still up there. And it'll try to run, and it just, the only reason why it fails is because it can't find the font. So what that tells me is, even though I have actually patched my library X11 to be able to actually to not use the system temp directory, but actually use, you know, the temp directory in the package source area because it has write access, I was able to overcome some issues with sockets that weren't even able to start up. It isn't really necessary to have those sockets, but you have to. The problem is that the newer versions of Modular Xorg don't give the option to build what's called XSDI. No, XSDL. That works, and it doesn't really need those sockets. The problem is that I just don't have the right font. It's looking for a particular font in the common directory. I was able to put the libraries I was looking for in boot home non-packaged library, and it'll start, but it'll die when it can't find the fonts. But I'll just try to make this thing first. I'm gonna make sure that this thing's empty, and I've turned off. And I'm also going to try to build, the problem with my last build of Library X11 is I didn't actively try to include Library Network. For the Qt4 libraries, the problem is that I didn't disable the X11 option with it. That's not confusing enough. Anyway, so this should be actually empty, so it's not in there. Should start fresh. The problem with the Qt4 libraries is it takes a long time, and it'll look like it's going to succeed for the longest time, and it'll just start failing. See, that on camera would commit me to another hour here, which man, it's already past 12. Let's see. And what's so strange about this, you actually have to disable X11. PackSource has Qt4 libraries in the X11 category. And I'm going to make sure that is cleared out. And it could take a long, long time. Now, Samba works pretty well, but I've noticed that when the system comes under a lot of stress, and I'm not really blaming Samba, such as when I was uploading my packages to Git in Windows and grabbing it from, I had mapped the Haiku share as a hard disk. Every once in a while, it would just crash and Samba would go out. I really do think there are memory limitations. Now let's get to Apache. After I delete Qt4 libraries. Start again. So tired of what I was going to talk about. Apache, right. So Apache will build, and most of the PHP modules that PackSource provides are designed or packaged in such a, they're called Apache whatever version /PHP. So I haven't really investigated it, but I take the package naming's word for it that these PHP packages are built to be integrated into Apache. Problem is that Apache doesn't start, at least not in this version of Haiku that I'm running. I haven't tried down the old Apache that was built at Haikuware. I don't know if the newer versions of Apache demand a certain amount of memory that the system doesn't have, or doesn't provide. I'm not even sure. But it won't run. It always complains about memory. Cherokee will run. Cherokee can handle PHP. So I actually, every time I come in, boot up, Cherokee automatically. I have that incorporated into the user boot script to start. Same as Samba. But the problem is that I was starting to think, well, what if I can't get any graphical programs to run? I mean, probably some of the more useful programs I'd want to use are PHP programs, it seems, because I've gotten pretty good at getting those things to build. I'd have like a kind of like a Google operating system of Haiku or something, but the problem is that, of course, Apache won't run, and I haven't looked into how to get these PHP modules to be integrated into Cherokee, actually. I have figured out how to get something else to load up. There's a whole human resources content management called Orange CRM package, a bunch of really large squirrel mail, a bunch of stuff. But whether it's going to run in Cherokee, I just don't know. I do have Courier. I have Spam Assassin. I have Fetch Mail. A lot of the components that I actually used to set up the server here, I could use in Haiku. The problem is the file system doesn't support hard links, and so I don't really know if I'd want to serve out, shares that don't support certain basic operations that other environments that are going to interact with it are going to want to use. And also, when it comes under heavy load, it just stops. It just disconnects. So it's not all that reliable. And I think, and I don't know how much kernel work we're going to do, or has been done, or if it's necessary, if there's something else going on. It's a mystery. This is going to take forever to extract Qt4 libraries, which means I'm probably going to stop it. And I'll get to that some other day, so at least this will try. But here's the deal. If Haiku doesn't have shared memory, if it's never going to get it, if it doesn't have that capability in the kernel, then it makes it much more difficult to build things like Cairo and Pango, and those things have to really be configure optioned and have a lot of features taken out of it just to get it to build. Shared memory has to be taken out. All the way down the chain, you get these undefined references, and so it makes building things much more difficult. Not having write access to the temporary, between not having write access to the temporary directory, not having shared memory, that allows people to build graphical programs that aren't just glue and glut based, but have Pango, Cairo, Mesa, glue, and glut, and X11 involved, perhaps. That limits a lot of POSIX. Basically, you're limited when you say, Haiku's has a POSIX compatibility layer. It really is very, very limited down to just things that will run at the command line. And right now, since I don't see a lot of people writing software that's designed to run in Haiku using Haiku's API and not the POSIX API, right now it's like the only viable way to get packages for people to use that people want to use on a day-to-day basis is through the POSIX layer. So if that's the only way we're going to be able to have people actually use the system on a day-to-day basis and do the things that they want, not just develop. Because that's, you know, if you have a narrow use case and you're a developer or you're a command line, yeah, you may use this thing every day for the past 5 years, but it isn't, that's not the question whether you've been able to do it. The question is whether the community at large, your average person, is able to use the system to do what they need to do. If they sit down and say, okay, I need to keep track of my checkbook, what do I use? Oh, there's nothing, sorry. Well, then there's nothing, then they're not going to use it. I mean, because there already are formidable barriers. I mean, most computers come with Windows already installed, right? or Apple, there's no hardware tied to Haiku, so there's no, people have to actually want to try something else. So we got to give them a reason to, and if we have no reason to give them, then they're not going to use our system. And one of the reasons is we got apps. You can do this. You can, you know. Now, even when you get to that part, and even if we had complete Linux compatible, you know, we had all the apps that Linux wanted, there still would be barriers to adopted use. Drivers, and quite frankly, I'm really wondering what this is all about with the headers, because now that I think about it, it's almost on every occasion, at least in Linux, you know, when you want to use some kind of device, you need a driver for it, and that drivers mean kernel, as far as I know. So you got some headers, yeah, but it doesn't mean you're going to be able to run your Wi-Fi. Who knows? I just don't know. It doesn't seem right, but whatever. So now I'm starting to worry about the kernel, but who knows? I have no information about it. There isn't a lot of discussion about shared memory, but basically, if you want to have success building some of the graphical programs, you actually have to turn some features off. Shared memory, and these are compile options. They aren't things that you patch. Let's see how this is going now. All you can do is hope for the best for the operating system, but we have a file system that doesn't have hard links, so 1% of the time you won't even be able to zip the source. And that's true. I mean, really, and that may even be large. I mean, in the failures that I've landed, yeah, that's maybe 0.5% actually. But Mesa was one of them. Between that and then during the build process, you know, hard links could mean problems. For some reason, it was a solution for FFTW. Got it right there on camera. In fact, maybe I'll take that thing. I'll try to build it, and anyway, it's really worth the time. So, a lot of the graphical packages are taken out because until I don't know. I think it's obviously been done in the past, but it's difficult to get graphical backend programs to run, right? So Mesa, GlueGlut, Cairo, all those things, and get them to actually work in the system. Got to have the shared memory disabled. Then there's the hard links. Then there's the no user directory. Then there's the no access to the temporary directory. You can't write to it. So a lot of things get cut out. At the end of the day, all you find is that all you really have, unless I'm able to put it this way, unless I'm able to overcome the shared memory issue, or the issue I'm having with Qt4, where it keeps trying to build the X11 portion of it, which I think is my own fault. I probably should have had that solved a long time ago. But if I can't turn it off, I'll find out eventually. Someone obviously has been able to build Qt4, but it's a trade secret. Who knows? I'm kind of rambling about that. But basically, the obstacles are very formidable, and not a lot of people are talking about this stuff. It's best to have the information out there. Everybody knows, oh, if you're going to build Qt4, you got to have X11 turned off. Once everybody knows, kind of like the math library, everybody knows, oh, math library, got to get that out of there. Hopefully these other things will be common knowledge. I guess that's my point. But as of now, since it hasn't been common knowledge, it's kind of been a roadblock to many parts of the community. And so this roadblock, that roadblock, one other guy drops off, another guy drops off for this reason, another guy drops off for this reason. At the end of the day, no one's doing anything. Which is not what we want. It's at least not what I want. I don't think that's what anybody wants. So, this is going to take forever. So, and then just certain programs just won't, I don't know, I gotta look at a patching and see if it has shared memory and see if it needs to be turned off. And what really is so annoying about this is I come to find this out, it just wasn't clear. It wasn't clear to me whether it was a kernel issue, and it's still, if I knew for a fact this was a kernel issue, I wouldn't hesitate. I'd just go in there, and if I would have known that up front, wait, a month ago, I've been doing this for like a month and a half. I would have turned shared memory off every time it was asked for, which is what I am doing now. But now I got to go back and redo a bunch of stuff, and I got to make sure I get all the dependencies from the bottom of the chain and work all the way up. And if I don't, it doesn't work that well. Another thing is that you have to get the X11 headers built right in the beginning, otherwise you have problems later on, especially with the FDS bits, and that's just, honestly, it's just annoying. And again, what I don't understand is if our goal is to have create a desktop operating system for people to use, then we ought to do things to decrease the barriers to people actually using the system. And why we've decided, there's a lot, not all of them, but a lot of packages that want to find FDS underscore bits. I don't see it does not, in my opinion, it will not hurt us to have FDS underscore bits in our headers and not just bits. And why we didn't add that, because FDS underscore bits isn't in the POSIX book, doesn't make any sense, especially at the end of the day, we don't even give our own users write access to the temp directory. So when Samba tries to run, when X11 tries to run, they both have problems that have to be patched and worked around because we don't have write access to the temp directory. So there's more work for the developer to do, because we just don't want to get, it doesn't make any sense. There's been a library, when you double click on the library X11 icon or run it from the command line, there's no code in there that's going to make it press the shift key to say, yes, I really want to make the file. The temp directory is a fundamental assumption to people that make POSIX software. In a lot of cases, in some very important cases, is that they'll have write access to the temp directory. And if we don't have write access to the temp directory, then there's no point in having, pristine, unblemished POSIX headers, when if at the end of the day, after we patch the hell out of the software to get it to run because we don't want to put FDS underscore bits in the header, um, that we can't run the program anyway because it wants to write to temp and we don't have it, right? So we got to patch it again to get it to not write to temp. And then, oh yeah, there's a variable in the system that you could grep the entire source code of Samba. You're not going to find a /temp directory. It looks for the variable. Okay, so the only way Samba actually works, I think I've come to conclude, I'm pretty sure this is right, is if security equals user, and that way it won't try to write to the temp directory. And I don't know why that's the case, but that's the way it works as far as I can tell. We're still going here, and I don't know. And one odd thing, this is modular X11, one odd thing is that I actually have to uninstall it. bmake replace doesn't really work, and then install it again and see if it'll work. Oh yeah, I was gonna run Pinkwine's XSDL. Now, this will happen very quickly, so pay attention. Woo, okay. So basically it's saying, we can't find this font path, and it's looking, basically, if I was able to figure out what this fixed font was, and if I was able to put it in common library X11, one of these, in fact I've copied all my fonts there, and that hasn't really resolved the issue. I probably would be able to have an X window sitting right there, and I'd be able to run all my X programs. But what this one important thing this tells me is there is some software out there that I run that isn't going to require that I have access to the temp directory, and if it, during this build, the fact that I've added library network, if that doesn't solve the issue that I'm having, that is to say that when, you know, the symptoms that I showed before on the first start, it can't make the display, and on the second start it just says it's already running, then the only viable option I have right now is use this old binary until such time as I could find some source code that has XSDL in it, and that's not part of the current version of modular Xorg. I got to figure out when that was taken out and decide to use it, and it's actually very useful. There used to be an option, configure option called enable XSDL, which is not there anymore. I've also looked into the other, there are other packages that will build with library X, the Xorg server. One that'll run it'll run an X window, you just can't see it. The other two, they don't really run anything. Anyway, enough of that. Then I got that one thing to run. It was actually running, but I just couldn't see the display. Now maybe I have to go back and undo the patches that I did to get it to want to write to the lock files to boot home package temp instead of the system temp, which is actually boot system cache. There's the X11 Unix. There's Cherokee's. But see, that is strange. Why does Cherokee have write access to that? Library X11 wasn't able to, this X11 here, see, I made the folder, so I gotta figure out what was going on. I know that there was, there's one part where it tries to create a hard link and not a soft link, but I've already changed that in Library X11. So there are some things I gotta sort out, but I know Samba has issues writing to that directory, and I think what's going on is I don't know. I just don't know. And part of it, it may be that I've actually caused other issues to happen. Maybe part of the X11 server code is trying to write to the other temp while I'm making it go to this temp. You know, who knows? But obviously, there's something about this XSDL, the way it's made, that allows it to at least start to try to run. I just don't know what that is, and I don't know how to change things to get the regular X11 to work. Now, I'm hoping that it's just library network. But if it's not it, then I have to find some older source code to try to build. This binary that I ran here that momentarily displayed an X window and went away, that was built in 2009. That was 5 years ago, over 5 years ago. As far as I know, it was the last time Library X11 was built. I could be wrong about that, but I don't know. You know, I don't know everybody building everything in the world, obviously, but obviously we want to know as time goes on, the Library X11 will run, so things like Firefox will run. But if our system just doesn't have the capacity to be able to run things like Library X11 or Firefox, then that ought to be just known, just out there. Otherwise, so anyway, between the tremendous amount of headers, I mean, if you just look in my, if I could just go in and just pick something, there's comms, mini comm. Is this missing a header? Not in that case. Not the make file. Standard INT. Standard INT. Standard INT. Now what's going on there? Well, there's obviously, you know, you don't have to, you know, feel silly. You know, if you look at all these patches, wow, you know, all these patches, all they have is they're one-liners with include. You know, here this guy's made 200 patches with standard INT, and you look at the code of all these things, and there's some other header that usually has a redirect to standard INT included in it. That just we refuse to do, and now we got 200 patches for that. It doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm trying to say? That's just one obstacle to POSIX. So overall, between all the different things that take place, it makes it very, very, this has been a marathon of tremendous proportion, and I'm not exaggerating. This has taken a long time. I've got some patches here from November 1st. I've been doing this just about every day, every moment that I've had free time. And that just, with that kind of, you know, once these things are out, of course, great. But, you know, a lot of things that I'm building, you know, there's no recipe in Haiku ports yet. You know, a lot of things, yes, there are, but you know, there's a lot of packages. There's 11,000 packages out there. Not that we have to use them all or anything like that, but it'd be nice to be able to use these things. I mean, they're made for a reason. There's obviously, and the wider use case that we have, the better it is for Haiku. That's all I'm saying. So, but still, even if I were just to go down the path to get to Library X11, and that's all I did, or just to Firefox, I would have just tremendous, formidable obstacles to go through. Between a lot of things that have very simple solutions, that just makes you wonder, why can't we just do something about it on the operating system level instead of making life hell for the people that are trying to make things for people to actually use. And I'm trying to alleviate that. Now these patches are out. We're not going to have that problem with package source anymore for a lot of these things. if some of the new versions come out and the new version of package source comes out, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my patches in. I'm going to do a run. I'm going to look at anything that didn't build that built before, and I'm going to make sure that they built and release my stuff as soon as possible, which is what I'm going to do every quarter. I'm going to make sure as time goes by, I'm going to maintain what I've built and try to build a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and make sure things can keep going. Let's see, how are we doing now? Oh, we're about 1/3 of the way done. Now, some of these things, I haven't really looked at these. I'll probably just nail a few. Just if I see anything that has to do with strings or some kind of. Okay, now I should talk about the NetDB header, because I've said, oh, there's something going on with it, but I really. A lot of the time, and many. I've had enough failures of this type of compilations where that it's worth mentioning. I'm not an expert at headers. I'm not an expert in what belongs on a header, and I'm not an expert at what belongs in code. So all I could just say is, okay, this is what's happening to me when I try to build these things. A lot of the time, and especially in the networking category, and that's probably the reason why the header is called netdb.h. A lot of the time, a build will start, or enough. There's been maybe 40 of these, so it's not like it happens all the time or anything like that. It's just there are enough of them. Okay. There's a few lines that I literally have to copy the header from the POSIX directory. I bring it down to the source, make a copy of the header, clear it out to make it 0 so it'll come in as a patch. Then I'll edit the header and get rid of what is a previous declaration of something. I'll get rid of that line, and then the thing will build beautifully. That happened with a package I built tonight that was surprisingly big. It was called ARIA, whatever that is. It's supposed to be a tool that's good at downloading things. Anyway, in that, I ended up having to, let's go to my patches here, to get it to build. As I notice, I have a patch source netdb. This is mostly actually the header that comes from Haiku, but it's missing a few lines. And the lines that are missing from here are the ones that I had to remove to get the compiler to stop complaining and stopping, and to actually go ahead and build. One of these patches actually makes sure that this netdb.h is included locally and not brought in from the header directory. I guess I could run a diff. In fact, maybe I think before I ran a diff on the netdb, and that would be probably in P5 socket 6. So here's a diff, and in this case, it seems like a lot of the time there seems to be complaints about. I bet you that the diff on this other netdb is going to be different. Yeah, no, actually, I remember removing this. So this free address info here, which I actually didn't need to remove for this. This I had to remove. It won't be in here. Watch. So I don't have a good enough idea of what I need to consistently remove. All I know is that this header consistently comes up, and I'm consistently needing to remove something from it. And it usually is around line 260 or something like that. In this area. I remember getting rid of this, and, you know, so I'm not an expert at headers, you know, but a lot of the time it was just a lot easier just to bring this thing down and remove the line, because it was, the code would say, well, we already have this, and now it's being redefined. Sometimes it would error out because of that. Sometimes it would just give me a warning because of that. Don't know what it means. Don't know if it's important. All I know is it might be something we want to change. Where? Let's doing the X386 hardware. Okay, so the overall numbers are that I have a 52% build rate. Now, in some cases, I was kind of happy and surprised about some of the build results that I had. So, for example, in sysutils, I got Bacula. Got fetch mail and get mail, although I can't even run fetch mail without an X window. And I'm working on that, hopefully. Oh yeah, the SIG.io thing is annoying. I mean, everybody. The real question is, ought there be some things that should be or should have been added to the POSIX standards? Or, you know, it's a wonder to know what it is they think about when they make those standards. Do they sit down and they say, okay, well, we would put the shared memory in here, but BSD 1987 can't handle shared memory, so if we want to stay POSIX, we're not going to do that. And I kind of have to wonder why shared memory is not in there. There are a lot of programs that by default want to build with shared memory on, especially starting with the graphical ones moving forward in the POSIX area. So there's still all these. Sometimes I don't need to do about these things. I'm just thanking my lucky stars. They're just warnings. Like, what is this? Note in the expression of XOR blah blah blah. But I know this will build. So now DRI I've actually disabled, so I don't. So here's, and then different, you know, when you have different obstacles, different problems come up at different areas. So just using a tool set like Pachysaurus, some of the builds are going to want to use hard links. So not having the hard links causes that issue. And I really wonder why we wouldn't want to provide those things, especially if we're going to say we're POSIX. You know, if we're going to say that we have POSIX capabilities, then shouldn't we try to give the best POSIX capabilities that we can? Especially if we want people to use this and people to develop for it. Not have to lock themselves in a room for months to be able to come up with a 50% build rate. then what we want to do is remove the obstacles people have. So there will be more builds and more people to use the operating system. Somehow these seem to be fighting words instead of just, hey, let's do this. It's like going into the looking glass. It doesn't make anyway. I don't know what directory I'm in now. X11 takes a long time, but not that long. I've been going almost an hour. If I can remember anything else that comes up here. Anyway, so I don't know. Just getting back, what's my suggestion? A lot more header redirects. Add the hard links. Give write access to the temp directory. And you'll have your community developers back. It seems like this is almost turned into some kind of holy war or something. I mean, just build packages. That's what we're here for. We're here to build packages and use an operating system. Nothing else really matters. Information is more important. Sharing information is more important than any argument you have with anybody. It's just what humans do. Humans learn, they discover, and they share information. To not do that is I don't know. Anyway, and what's the point of all that? Well, sometimes the information isn't the information you expected to hear, or that you wanted to hear, or it's not the way it planned out, or it doesn't correspond with the plans that you had at one point. But sometimes you gotta be flexible and change things and let other ideas come into the mix. Sometimes the things are too tightly constrained. Other people that probably could add some good things, even though they never do anything the way you would do it, or vice versa. They can still add to the good things that you do, and then when they kind of come together, it's like, oh wow, I never knew that would happen, but this is great. Even it doesn't have to be an either or question. It doesn't have to be anything like that. Just because I'm using package source doesn't mean that I'm anti Haiku Porter. Or if I used Haiku Porter, that I'm supposed to hate package source. They both have their place. Basically, Haiku Porter is a place to put things when it's all polished up and ready to go. And the solutions are found and ready to put, that's where everything's going to end up. But until such time to explore and get things going, I wouldn't be able to work with Haiku Porter to explore and learn new things and try stuff and try to come up with solutions or get people in a position to be able to move forward. Because I don't know how to make the recipes, things like that. I don't know Python, things like that. But I do know some scripting. And this just kind of makes sense to me at this stage. So, in a year from now, I'll probably wonder why I was using this in the first place. But right now, this makes sense to me. So, as time goes on, or I may try Haiku Porter and wish I never did. But it doesn't really matter. What matters is that people are able to actually use the OS. That's what this is about. I don't care if I'm completely wrong about 90% of the stuff that I say. If at the end of the day it leads to the right answer and more people get to use the OS, I could live with being wrong. And I'll admit when I'm wrong. I know I was wrong about the hard links with Python. And you know what? building all these packages, I had a, just to show this, I had a this is the equivalent of user local, and there's absolutely zero, nothing is trying to write to that at all, nothing. That temp directory I made when I was trying to get Samba to run. So a lot of stuff will run without a user directory, although a lot of the things want a user directory, but not too many. Python does or did. There's a few cases where they've have user hard coded in there, but it's pretty rare. Overall, in the grand scheme, out of the 5 or 6,000 packages I was actually able to build, it seems pretty clear that there are less packages that want to have a user directory than there are packages that want a standard INT header that we have, but it's just not in the place where most systems have it. I'm just going to try to link up here. I think. I'm probably still going to reboot because whatever files are sitting around that I haven't figured out where they are or what they're doing, it's making xvfb, which is that one that you can run but you can't see it. A lot of good that does for me in this situation. I'm really, really hoping that the full-blown X11 will run. But it may be what I was speculating about before, is that there's a unsolvable catch-22. X11 wasn't, I don't know, I gotta really grep this code, try to figure out where the hard links, if it's trying to make hard links, where that's happening. And there's a couple interesting things that I found out. So go into this before, because it's not ready to link yet. After I had built modular Xorg, at some stage it would one of the failure errors was that it wasn't able to create the socket files in the temp directory, and there were 2 sets of socket files actually, for whatever reason. One set of the socket files oh boy, I think, yeah. No. It's going to be one of the later ones that I've done. So where is it? Great. I guess I'll just keep going. Anyway, what you're going to see is when I find this, you'll see that I've changed, there's actually the path looking for temporary in one of these files. Somewhere. You gotta believe me. The other set is actually supplied by a program called xproto. Some of these patches aren't even necessary for the disabled build I'm doing. Here's sigio to sigil. Here we go. So there are two sockets that actually. This is actually text, but over here, this is where it actually tries to create a file in the temp directory. It's in the input output.c file. Okay. But there's also another set of twin sockets that want to build it, that want to connect, and it, for some reason, it was not able to actually make the files, and it may be, I don't know what strcomp int directory means, but perhaps that means hard link. I don't know how to make it say soft link. I don't know. There may be some other part of the code. Don't know. Maybe some other completely different package. But the other part of the point is that there are two other socket files that don't come out of the Xorg modular server code, but is actually created by Xproto, and it's in its code, and it had to be patched. That isn't it, but this was fun. Every one of these that say bits, I had to change from FDS bits. It looks like it may be trying to install there. Oh yeah, also this will also say not supported. When I saw that, I go, yes! That means it's going to build. Is it Xproto? Or is it? No, it's Xtrans. Xtrans, okay. Here, so these .x11 pipes, it's in the translcl.c file. When Xorg makes two of its hard links, it actually, not hard links, two of its sockets, which I don't know if are hard links or not. It's creating it as a result of following the instructions in this code. So right now I have it going to boot home package temp where we have write access. At least so it seems. It could be it's trying to create a hard link, and I have to find the place inside of Xtrans has hard linking code. I should probably grep for a link in that. So, okay, so I'm done building modular Xorg server. So I'm gonna package delete the old one. And I'm not holding my breath, but I am a little bit excited because this might actually work. I've actually included the library network in this. At least I believe I have. I have to wonder if it's somebody's linking. Problem is I'm not seeing library network. I'm not holding my breath there. So I'm getting rid of the old one. Install. I don't think it's going to work. Installs rather fast. Or uninstalls faster than installs. I'm not seeing. I tried to get in there in the LD flags, but I'm not sure if it's getting in there. Alright, so it's installed. I'm going to reboot this sucker. But I think it's going to do the same thing. I'll finish with this and move on. So anyway, the way things are going to go is every once in a while I'm going to go in and try some more packages, and ones that I haven't really tried and haven't really been able to look at the error, the reason for the error, and decide whether it has a chance to build or not. and upload patches and packages as they build and as I have success, or settings. In the future, that'll probably continue till about early January, and then won't start up again until after sometime in late April. Which kind of screws up my first quarter plan. But the good news is package source will just build. So, yeah. You just go into the directory, make install, and but still, it's a lot of work to see that I've got the same stuff that I did before. Yeah, same thing. So I whatever. It's kind of like that. Because here's another thing. Because the system has a lot of limitations, and there aren't a lot of discussions about what those limitations are. There's a few gurus here and about that, some 5-6 years ago, once had built this or that. Didn't really talk about it all that much, but try to leave instructions, but it's kind of in some repository off somewhere else. That at the end of the day, it's hard to know how these things are actually supposed to be built. So it takes a lot of trial and error, and the build process takes a long time. So now the next thing I'm going to look is I'm going to look in there, look in the make file, and see if LNetwork's in there, and if it's not, see if I can add it somehow, and see if I can build it, uninstall, reinstall, see if that makes a difference. If that doesn't make a difference, then I'm going to go back to configure, look at the options, who knows, try to search around for temp files floating around. There can be so many different things that could be causing this. Usually all the solutions are very simple, but it's hard to know what those are, so it takes a long time. It takes a lot of work to get here, and then just have things just kind of out on you because we don't have shared memory, we don't have this feature, or maybe some feature that I've yet to discover that we don't have in the operating system. It makes for a big letdown. A lot of people leave at that point. This is supposed to be feedback. Oddly enough, not sure how it's going to be taken, but that's the way things are. Also, just another side comment, because we're missing a lot of things like shared memory and this, that, and the other thing, and it is a very difficult environment to build POSIX packages in. It really is hard to say or label community developed software as crap when you put everything together. It's hard to know whether it would run well in the first place under most circumstances, and especially in this situation where the OS is still being developed. To make this clear, I'm putting this stuff up so people want to use it, they can, but I'm not guaranteeing they're going to work perfect. And if they don't like the way it works, they could get the source, they could look at the patches that I've made, and they can decide that maybe they don't want to patch it the way I have, and maybe if they could do it better, that's great, and I want that to happen. I want people to take my stuff and make it better. A lot better, really good. So maybe next time when I try it, I know that if I use this tool set, that I'm going to have a working Mosaic out of it, or maybe an earlier version of Firefox, or maybe Netscape, or then the next time, and someone else will try, and we'll progress. the deal is just take all the patches that I have there and just put it in your repo and use it as your own and add whatever the hell you want to and take in whatever the hell you want out of it. And then when you're done with your marathon, the next person will start going around, and then the assumption is things will get better. If they don't, we also have the old patches to fall back on. So, all right, that's it.